Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kaylee. Welcome back to the show. So here's the question to start. When people say marriage is all about love, do they also mean love, culture, religion, family reputation, and ancestral expectation all wrapped into one? Because that's exactly what intermarriage can feel like, especially in collectivist society like China and India. So, marriage here is really just between two people. It's often negotiation between personal desire and expected family expectation. So today we will be talking about how China and India differ in the cross-cultural marriage, although both of them are in collectivist society, for the 4 psychological challenges. First, mental health versus family role conflict. Personal autonomy versus collectivist expectation, cultural attitudes toward divorce, long-term psychological risk of cultural conflict. For each, we will explore the problem, contributing factors, theories, and practical solution. Before we jump in, can we have our guests introducing themselves?
Right. Hi, I'm Muiz.
And I'm Jasmine.
I'm Yunfei.
And I'm Bridget.
Okay, so let's start our first questions.
Okay, the first question is how to protect mental health while dealing with family expectations. In China, family values are very important. People are taught to respect their parents, to listen to elders. People are taught to respect their parents. After marriage, many are expected to put family needs before personal feeling. For example, a young woman in Beijing wanted to pursue her dream career in another city. Her parents expected her to stay home after marriage. She felt guilty and stressed, caught between duty and desire.
So even when nobody is openly arguing, people feel constant stress. Why does this happen?
Yeah, that's right. That stress doesn't have to be done explicitly. It doesn't have to be given out by scolding or openly saying that you're not doing the right thing. The stress that collectivist cultures they suffer from is actually much more subtle but still powerful. You can see that in China, actually, the disappointment is communicated very indirectly. It's done through silence, through body language, or through withdrawal from the person that they are disappointed about. And in contrast, India is a bit more open about this. But the way they do it is not by openly scolding. They camouflage this by things like giving out advice or performing meetings, and sometimes they will, instead of judging you one by one, it's through these meetings that they can openly judge you and say that as a family, you're not doing the right thing. An example of this would be something like, if a man in India wants to spend the evening with his wife, but the extended family have this nightly family dinners, they in turn will suffer anxiety and be very much under the pressure to decide whether do I value spending time with my wife alone, or do I value my mental health when protected from my extended family members?
Collectivism theory explains this. In collectivist cultures, identity is relational, means that your sense of self isn't just internal but is formed and defined through connections and interactions with others and the world, highlighting the interconnected self rather than a completely independent one. And yes, marriage definitely is a family alliance and not just a romantic partnership. When a marriage challenges cultural norms, individuals may feel guilt and anxiety even without any direct confrontation.
Okay, so this is a very tricky one, but I personally feel that it's better when the couple, presents decision as this is something that we decide together. Work as a team rather than, oh, this is what I want, this is what my wife wants, this is what my husband wants. So families in both Chinese and Indian cultures, they respect unity very much. So when they see a couple working as a team, working together, they are most likely to accommodate and just respect their decisions as husband and wife. So psychologically, boundary setting with emotional respect is very, very essential and crucial. So from a psychological perspective, healthy boundaries are not just about control or rejection. They're about self-regulation and emotional maturity. So everyone who's married here understand this, that, how important boundary is. So it's usually set with emotional respect. You acknowledge your husband or wife's emotions such as disappointment, any fears that they have, confusion, while maintaining their very own limits. So for instance, this can happen when instead of setting a boundary in a very harsh way or a very defensive way, you set it in a very emotionally respectful boundary setting. Sounds like, oh yes, I understand this is important to you, I respect how you feel, but at the same time, this is what I want, this is what I'm comfortable with. So, easy, healthy boundaries to set to make the marriage very manageable and sustainable. Yeah.
Okay. So let's have our problem number 2, which is wanting to live your life but realizing your family already has a plan.
Okay, cross-cultural couples often want autonomy, choosing career, parenting, and lifestyle. The second problem is a conflict between personal freedom and family expectations. In India, family interests usually come before personal wishes. Decisions about career, where to live, or how to raise the children often involve the whole family. This can make people feel confused and pressured, especially when their personal goals are different from the family wants. Like a young woman in India, she wanted to work abroad, but her family expected her to stay near relatives. She struggled between independence and duty, feeling constant inner conflict.
Right. And about autonomy and collectivism, right? It's quite interesting, the contrast between China and India. In China, actually, urbanization, the rapid urbanization actually allows for a more personal choice. But in the sense that their autonomy is actually much more expected to benefit the family, the nuclear family. Whereas in India, you can see that caste, religion, and honor actually enforce this a lot of constraints, making autonomy actually much harder. An example would be like we are talking about cross-cultural marriage. In China, it's actually much more acceptable to have cross-cultural marriage, especially when the person is marrying someone who is theirs or a higher financial value, so the spouse can actually help the immediate family members. That's how they can see it is benefiting the family. Whereas in India, the caste is a very big problem. You can't marry the upper caste. They will say you cannot marry anyone from a lower caste. So even if there's love and all that, if they do, they become like a pariah in their own society. So this kind of contrast actually makes a lot of painful choices, where you have to see whether in China you have to see whether the family will agree that it benefits, or in India where you have to see whether the family agrees that they will accept this person or not.
Yeah. Modernization theory explains this. Modernization theory predicts an increase in intermarriage, specifically social and ethnic heterogamy, as societies transition from traditional to modern forms. This is driven through industrialization, urbanization, and education expand personal choice. In China, modernization increased free maid selection and intermarriage. While in India, modernization allows more negotiation within arranged marriages, but caste and religious constraints remain. So this will create tension where personal aspirations rise faster than social flexibility.
Okay, so one of the few effective strategy that we can use to tackle this is the strategy of bicultural identity integration. So what this means is where individuals learn to hold both their personal and their cultural values without viewing them as oppositional. So this means that both can coexist. It's not going to be easy. It will be tough, but as long as it's managed well with transparency, with honesty between both parties in the marriage, it will be manageable. So this involves reframing autonomy not as selfishness, but to strengthen long-term family harmony. So couples can also opt to, value in negotiation. I'm not saying that a marriage is a business, but it's negotiating what you value is very important. So for instance, like discussing decisions relating to career, parenting styles, living arrangement, and all this should be discussed usually in the early marriage. And then psychologically, this is going to reduce chronic stress and identity conflict. So when it comes to identity conflict, a lot of people, or maybe most people I would say, face this when they get into a marriage, they will start losing kind of their identity because you're basically two people forming into one. You always question, like, is this the life that I want? Is this my values? Just to make sure that I'm not impacted by my partner's values and wants. All this kind of internal struggle that you have. So all this can actually lead to a few psychological consequences if it's unresolved. So it can include anxiety, suppressed emotions, resentment. Resentment is common, especially if this happens. Emotional burnout. So over time, individuals can actually experience role strain, and they'll question whether am I enough for my partner, whether am I enough for the family.
Okay, so what's about divorce, stigma, and social judgment?
Okay, about divorce, had talk. In China, divorce is often seen as a personal failure. Many people think marriage should last forever, so divorce is seen as something bad. People may worry about losing face or being judged by relatives, friends, even neighbors. Parents may also feel ashamed or disappointed, which can make individuals feel guilty or uncomfortable. And in India, divorce is often seen as a family failure, not just a problem between two people. Marriage is usually seen as a connection between two families. When a divorce happens, it can affect parents, brothers, sisters, and other family members. Women especially may face more blame and pressure. They may worry about their future, their safety, or how they will support themselves. Because of this strong social and cultural pressures, many people stay in unhappy marriages. They may not stay because they are happy or in love, but because they are afraid of what others will say. Fear, the shame, and haunting their family often becomes more important than their own happiness.
Yeah, that brings up a very good point. How it's a similar psychological issue. It's the anxiety, it's the stress of divorce. But how it manifests is actually very different. You can see that in China, the people who actually go through divorce, as Yunfei has said it's a personal failure. And because they see it as a personal failure, it's more akin to a thinking of, I made the wrong choice. It starts off as I shouldn't have made this choice, or I definitely did not make the wrong choice. I made the right choice in a partner. And this leads to how the early problem solving doesn't happen, because I did no wrong. I chose correctly, and then it builds up from there. But when when divorce does happen, it's an entirely different matter. But in India, the problem is manifested by issues that, instead of it's my own personal mistake, it's the family mistake, and that carries a lot more weight, especially considering that India has a lot of arranged marriages again, right? So you see that the psychological stress actually comes from their need to endure all this pressure, so the family doesn't lose face and they don't lose their social status. Because if divorce does happen, like Yunfei said, it leads to social isolation. And it doesn't just occur as social isolation in the context of your family members are not seeing you. It goes wider, because whether we want to admit it or not, almost everybody in India will know everybody else. There's a family member who knows some family member over there. So it leads to having difficulty in finding jobs or finding work basically finding work in any other way to support yourself. So very interesting conversation there.
To relate this is honor-based collectivism. In societies valuing honor and collectivism, there is often a strong pressure for endogamy, which is marriage within one's own group, while intermarriage exogamy is frequently seen as a threat to the family's social standing, reputation, and the preservation of cultural, ethnic, or religious identity. And marriage reflects family reputation. And on the other hand, divorce threatens the collective identity more than the marital relationship. So divorced couples often feel the burden is more about a family shame rather than personal well-being.
Okay, so if we're going to relate this to divorce and mental health, it's usually better protected when couples view marriage stability not as endurance but as an active conflict management. So in a marriage, problems are always going to arise. Like, you're always going to have to manage and resolve conflict. It's very, very normal, right? So when it comes to psychoeducation, it helps family understand that conflict resolution and therapy are not signs of failure, but tools for preservation. I think when it comes to these two cultures, like India, the Indian culture and the Chinese culture, therapy is still seen as a kind of like, oh, why are they going to therapy? Like, they're failing as a family, as a couple. It's still not in the brightest of light when it comes to this in mental health, right? So, but rather they should see this as a tools for preservation, tools to, to make their relationship as a family better. So, for instance, when divorce becomes a possibility in a marriage, non-judgmental support systems are also very important, such as having friends, counselors, therapies, suitable peer groups. This is to reduce shame and depression, because when it comes to divorce, it comes with shame, right? Like, not everyone wants to go through a divorce because it's kind of embarrassing for these two cultures, the Indian and the Chinese culture. And then divorce is not an easy thing to go through. It can comes with depression, anxiety, and all this mental health negative impacts. So families should learn how to shift from blame to problem solving again, to create a healthier emotional environment. And then they should have, of course, more flexible attitudes. Even with traditional framework, they should very much encourage open dialogue, full transparency, honesty, early intervention, and emotional repair, and this can make their marriage very sustainable.
Alright, so last problem to discuss: psychological burnout from cultural conflict.
Okay, over time, these culture and family pressures can seriously affect mental health. Long term, stress like this can lead to anxiety, emotional tiredness, and feeling lost about who you really are. People may start to feel trapped and helpless, as if they have no control over their own lives. They may hide their true feelings and pretend to be fine, even when they are not. This can make them feel lonely and unsupported, and their mental health may slowly get worse.
And this psychological burnout from cultural conflict, actually it raises an interesting thing to talk about, because we've been talking about how China and India have been different in the way that, how the stress actually comes about. But in the sense of the psychological burnout, is actually very similar, in the sense that a person who is in a cross-cultural marriage, they actually suffer from their own identity issues, because the partner will have to wonder, how do I behave? Do I behave in a sense that I want to be for an example, right? Let me give you a husband. How do I behave with my wife's family? Do I behave in a way of my own culture, or do I behave in the way of my wife's culture? And when I'm talking, I want to be a good father, but how am I supposed to teach my children? Am I supposed to teach my culture, my wife's culture, or is that a mix of cultures, or how do we go about this? How do they go about this? And the issues will the issues come from this, where they have a conflict in their identities, which leads to increasing stress on how they want to manage their family life, right?
We can relate this to identity fragmentation. Identity fragmentation in intermarriage occurs when individuals struggle to reconcile their personal cultural identity with their identity as part of an intercultural couple, a challenge often driven by external social disapproval and marginalization. And this occurs when multiple social roles conflict and causing psychological strain and emotional exhaustion.
Okay, so when it comes to psychological burnout from cultural conflicts or even in general, it's very important for us to develop emotional literacy. So what this means is that you have the ability to first recognize and then to understand and express your feelings clearly instead of ignoring or suppressing them. This is because in many Chinese families, in the Chinese culture, emotions are often kept inside to avoid conflicts, because they always want to keep the family harmony, they want to keep it peaceful, they want to make sure everyone's happy. And also in many Indians' family, emotions may be expressed, like Mui said, but it's usually shaped by very strong social or family expectations. They can still express it, but at the same time, it's still based on what their extended family want, for instance. So if these kind of emotions are not understood or expressed properly, stress, again, it will build up very silently, and of course it will affect the marriage. So a few practical solutions here. First, you can learn how to name the feelings. Say, I feel pressured, I feel unheard. Try to use the I word instead of you, because that's going to shift from, you managing a conflict, and then it becomes a blaming game between the partners. Practice expressing emotions calmly instead of holding them in. You can even validate your partner's emotions even if you don't fully agree, right? It's in a marriage, you'll have a lot of agree to disagree situations. And then we can also have shared meaning making as a couple. So this means that you have a shared understanding. You have to talk about things like respect, family, success, what marriage means for you. So you have to talk with full transparency on what a good marriage looks like together. Decide how much family involvement feels as a healthy family. You have to agree on how conflict should be handled, and then this is going to give the couple emotional stability and a sense of, we're in this together, we can conquer anything. And then the last one, which is my favorite, it's actually coming up with a third culture. So what is a third culture? No, it's not a new culture, it's not a new Chinese culture, it's not an Indian culture, it's actually your own marital culture. You come up with your own culture. So what this means, you can few examples you can come up with, blending traditions in festivals because it's a multicultural marriage. You can create new family rituals, agreeing on communication styles that is unique to the couple because if you grow up with different cultures, there's going to be a very different style of communication. This is going to create a new shared identity for couples, and then the psychological benefit behind it is higher resilience, less identity conflict, and stronger emotional connection.
Okay, so to sum up, marriage is about love, but in our cross-cultural setting, right, it's also negotiation, empathy, and emotional intelligence. So understanding culture doesn't remove conflict, but it equips couples to handle it with less guilt, stress, and silent suffering. So remember, love is patient, love is kind, and love sometimes needs boundaries and a mute button for the family WhatsApp group. Okay, thank you all. Thank you, listener, for your time to join us for the show today. I'm Carrie, the host of the day, and the guest.
I'm Bridget.
I'm Yunfei.
I'm Jasmine.
And I'm Muiz.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.